Okay, Mary's going to take over.
No, I'm not. When you speak, please come to the mic, turn it on, and talk into it. Otherwise, the recording picks up nothing of what you have to say. All right, thank you. I'm shutting up now.
Let us stand and do a pledge of allegiance. Oh, it's this way. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Oh, God. Okay, we're going to have the applicant presentation first. Oh, no, we're going to have Corinne.
No, first you need to move through your new business, which is approval of the regular minutes from your last meeting last year.
Sorry. Oh, I picked up the same. Approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was in July 2020.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those against? Thank you. Okay. Okay, next on our agenda, I can't see far, but I can't see close with my glasses on, is the Riverbank application.
I think we need to approve the agenda as well.
Huh?
I think we need to approve the agenda as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to approve the agenda. Is this agenda okay?
I move that we approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those against? Okay, so the agenda and the minutes from the last meeting have been approved. Oh, it was June. Okay, now we're going to start the Riverbank. The Riverbank? Okay. Are the applicants here?
Madam
Okay.
Chair, if I could, I'll need to recuse myself on this one.
I gotcha. Yeah, only 580 pages of Odessa. Okay, we'd like the,
Order then. Do we have enough people here to go ahead with this meeting?
ooh,
You do, you have a quorum.
3 of us?
It's a majority of the board, and it has been established by our town attorneys historically that the attendance of a board member who has to recuse themselves from the discussion portion still counts toward the quorum. So even if Ms. Hunter wasn't present, we still have a quorum with 3 of 5 present.
Thank you. Okay, would you like to do the presentation for Riverbank?
I'll provide a
Application?
brief introduction first, which was included in the packet under the administrator report. I'll just read the opening.
Oh, I'm missing this.
Which states, Evo Renkema, on behalf of Old World LLC, provided an initial major subdivision application and variance request for review with previous administrator Knight in 2017-2018. The process had some delays and was readdressed following my assuming administrator duties in 2019. A joint community work session with the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees was held and well received June 4th, 2020. The primary areas of concern from the community during the meeting were the walking path to connect the neighborhood to the school property and the inclusion of sidewalks. The application was deemed substantially complete November 25th, 2020, and applicant was so notified via email. Subsequent virtual meetings, review, and correspondence ensued to bring us to date. The applicant provided updated data and responses to town engineering reviews and requested the process move forward as presented February 22nd, 2021. Due to a noticing error, the original Planning Commission review was rescheduled from March 25th, 2021 to April 16th, 2021, current. All information about the application and request for variances are included in the packet, and my anticipation is that we'll discuss those individually as we move through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinne. Okay, so, oh God. Number items, we're going to go through 5 through 25.
We'll need to have the representative for the applicant.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you, when you spoke, could the representative for Riverbank please come up and do their presentation? Well,
We don't have a presentation per se. I think that the information in the packet is pretty thorough.
yes.
And there's been a lot of time and review and with town attorney and Corinne and engineers and et cetera. So I think all the pertinent information is there. And as we go through, if there are items that I feel like maybe I could clarify or whatever, if that's okay, I'll offer that. But as far as for general presentation, I think the information is pretty thorough.
Definitely it is.
Yeah,
Going
exactly.
to 300 and some pages.
Yeah, I don't need to take more time.
Okay.
Frederick, would you state your name?
Oh, my name is Frederick Zimmer. I'm representing Evo Renkema of Old World Properties.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the review and recommendation from A through D, this is hard because I wasn't going to print out all the pages. I guess what we're going to do is get community comments on this, and then you'd be able to answer some of the questions. So do we have any questions right now or comments? Bill? Hey, excuse me, Bill raised his hand. Oh, you didn't want to raise your hand.
Again, please come to the podium, turn on the mic, and speak in the mic if you want to talk.
My name is Daphne Salone. I'm on Price Road, and my property is bordered on the south and east sides by the proposed subdivision. So the specifics I'm wondering about is the Feldman ditch and what is formally proposed or approved by the ditch company for the Feldman ditch shares to be delivered. Specifically, my lateral at this point traverses the entire subdivision from the east side to where it joins into my property line. And my second question is how is this being engineered to accommodate the U.S. Fish and Wildlife designation of part of the subdivision being a PEM1C designated wetland?
Okay, would someone like to answer that? Okay. Would you have to?
No, as far as the irrigation water, it will migrate through the subdivision. It'll be distributed appropriately to each owner, and then it will make its way down the line to the rest of the recipients as is appropriate.
Okay,
And as far as the wetlands,
right.
Corinne might be able to speak to that, but I haven't heard anything about wetlands on this particular project. I don't know that there are wetlands that we need to mitigate. We're not going into wetlands, so I don't know why we would have to mitigate or make any other steps in that direction.
Okay, she has another question.
Of the PEMSC designated wetland, which, as far as I can tell, affects lots, I'm an amateur. 8, 10, 12, and 14 probably are on wetland.
Okay, well, I find it interesting that you're the only one that has discerned that when we've spent all this time with town-sponsored engineers and our own engineers, but I can't really speak to it because, again, I wasn't aware of it. I don't think the town was aware of it either. So we can look into it, and that's the best we can do at this point.
When the original survey was done, I believe it was Wilmore and Company,
Yes.
did they mark any of that as a wetlands?
Not to my knowledge. Honestly, that's the first I've ever heard, and I know Corinne will agree. That's the first. We've talked about everything under the sun, and again, this project's been on the docket for, over a decade.
Yes.
So that's the first I've heard of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Now, Bill.
My name is Bill Bruner. I live on 2nd Street in Paonia. So my comments regarding the Riverbank neighborhood subdivision basically starts with if there is a single variance applied for, the town can apply whatever conditions and stipulations it sees fit to the application if it approves it. The approval of any part of this subdivision application should be contingent on the lifting of the water moratorium. It boggles the mind that the developers have made this application with a water moratorium in place. There's no guarantee that the water they need will ever be available. The town should be sure it does not approve a ghost town that will be a permanent scar on the face of Paonia. Perhaps this application should have been dead on arrival and has been accepted in error. There are state laws requiring a confirmed water supply for developments like this. The town of Paonia is remiss in ignoring this common sense requirement. Even Delta County requires a confirmed source of water for subdivisions. Granting development rights based on new town water taps is a violation of the water moratorium. Any approval must at least be contingent on the availability of that water. All new connections to town water lines are prohibited by the moratorium. This should be specifically stated. The developer should be made fully aware they may never hook up to a town water pipe. There should be no recommendation for approval of any application with a zoning density greater than the density in the development as proposed. Approval of this development with 8.5 lots as R2 will grant a vested development right to the full build-out allowed under R2 and preclude the town from changing the zoning to a more restrictive designation in the future. Town regulations on the allowable density under R2 are ambiguous and could be interpreted to allow apartments or similar high-density development. Again, this would be a vested development right. R2 designation could be interpreted as a promise to supply R2 water despite the moratorium. Please don't let this happen. Any deferment of improvements should be contingent on the posting of a bond to cover the foreseeable cost of those improvements. Staff recommends a postponement of the curb and gutter until 50% of the parcels are sold due to the economic impact of the moratorium. They may never sell this many. A bond for the foreseeable cost of any deferred improvements should be required. Any approval should be the requirement that no part of the development is ever placed in a conservation easement. Conservation easements already limit the options for growth of Paonia. This was a major factor in the fiasco that came about with the Hawkshaven Road and has apparently prevented the annexation of that enclave. that prevented the sale of some of the lots, which got them out of the requirement to pave their road.
Okay, you have one more minute. I'm
All right,
keeping an
sure.
eye on the
I
time.
didn't know there was a time limit. It hadn't been
Well, I'm
announced.
sorry, I
The
should
town
have
should be
stated
very
it.
cautious in proceeding, lest it unwittingly accept any of the risks the developer is exposing themselves to. Please be sure that no vested rights are granted that could in any way pose a burden on the community. Again, under state law, this application should probably have never been accepted because there is no confirmed source of water. Any approval should be fully conditioned on the lifting of the moratorium. Finally, I ask the committee to recommend that the town enact a moratorium on all development that would involve new taps as long as there is a moratorium in place, and a recommendation to incorporate the existing common sense state laws regarding the availability of water into the town's land development regulations.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, and I'll provide a couple of comments here.
Any other comments?
Chair, I would like to answer two of the specific topics that were brought up by Mr. Bruner.
Yes.
First, the application for the development was submitted and accepted by the town prior to the moratorium on water tap sales. Second, all conversations, discussions, and final approvals have been clearly stated to the developer that they are contingent upon the availability of taps beyond Phase 1. Phase 1 of the development already owns a water and sewer tap for Lot 1 and Lot 2. And also in the, included in the, apologies, I lost my verbiage. Included in the subdivision improvements plan, page 2 of 11, it's page 196 in the packet. Item 4 discusses that the developer will, before commencing work on any phase, place funds in an account and show proof to the town that these funds will be sufficient for payment of improvements for water, sewer, and road and other items listed as a development cost estimate, and that development cost estimate would be provided by the town's independent engineering firm.
Thank you, Corinne. Any other comments? Suzanne?
Suzanne Watson, 903 2nd Street. So I just had a question. If this property is zoned R2 based on what the original plan is, but now they're actually kind of pledging to keep it a lower density development, you're taking R2 lots and then you're splitting them into 2 more R2 lots. What's the purpose of keeping the R2 zoning? And, you know, there's a right that goes with, a vested right that goes with R2 zoning that is really a higher density. So I'm just wondering what the purpose for keeping that R2 zoning is at this time, since they're talking about doing the build out in a lesser manner because it's supposedly going to have lesser impacts, so they want variances on the infrastructure that they're putting in. And when you look at the entire area, the section that has the hops farm is zoned R2 as well, and they got a variance to do their agricultural endeavor there. So at this point in time, it doesn't seem to make sense to keep an R2 zoning on that whole area because it's just being used in a completely different manner. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to require a rezone of that area to proceed with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody would like to make a comment on hers? No? Okay.
The only thing I would add to that is that an applicant has the choice to present their application as they suit to the board and to the Planning Commission. And while the town has zoned the property previously as R2 at the time it was annexed, the town would have to undertake a rezoning that ultimately zoning and the other decisions are recommendations that would go to the board from the Planning Commission and addressed accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Christina Patterson, Price Road. I too am concerned with fundamentally the water, that we have a water moratorium and that we're not wasting, but using all this time in this major subdivision when we do not have the water situation handled for the citizens already existing in town. Also, I'm very concerned with the R2 zoning that is currently that it is currently zoned right now. If it was R1, and is Evo on the phone right now, or can we talk to the developer?
He was not, we are not able to facilitate him being on a Zoom during this meeting, no.
I'm also concerned with the timing of this meeting. I just want to go on notice that people work. A lot of us had to get out of work to be at this meeting. 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock is generally a planning and zoning meeting. Well, I think it is because I think it was changed because of Evo's time zone, and now he's not at the meeting. So I would just like to say, if Evo could check in and say that he was amicable to changing that to R1, that would make a huge difference to our neighborhood and in agreeing or not agreeing to this development. So I don't know if his assistant could talk about that.
Sorry.
I don't have an answer for that at the moment because it's another item that has never been proposed. Everything has seemed fine with the R2 zoning, and that's what the town attorney's been comfortable with, and that's what all the applications were filed under, and we've never been made to think that there was any reason to consider it otherwise. If it really were an important issue or it had some value, I'm sure Eva would consider it. I heard it referred before that, well, the way it was referred to the fact that the number of lots have decreased, that was done by Evo because he was aware of the fact that what he was proposing felt like too much for the town, and that the neighbors were not happy. He's provided a 3-acre buffer to this neighborhood that's there that these people are having issues with. So point being is that he is a reasonable person, and if there were real value in changing the zoning, I'm sure he would be open to the conversation. But again, to this point, this is the first we've heard of that being any kind of issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other? Yes? Mask on, please.
Sorry.
Mask, we'd like mask on when you're in the room, please. Christine. Thanks so much. Okay, go ahead, please.
Hi, Barry Smith, Price Road. This podium's very low. I have the same concerns, excuse me, as the rest of the neighborhood. I also thought this meeting was at 1 o'clock so that we could accommodate Evo being present. Now questions are being asked specifically of him, and at this meeting it would be great if he were able to answer those, but he's not here. So things are going to proceed without these issues being heard and acknowledged by Evo, which seems like an important detail. At this point, this development is being touted as a lower density, but with R2, technically it could be 10 apartment buildings or something like that. So I don't feel there's a real guarantee yet that this is a lower density, and I would like some assurance of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So for clarification, in R2, single-family dwelling and a two-family dwelling, as in a duplex, are permitted by right. Anything other than that would be a special review or variance application. So at maximum, each lot could hold 2 homes. This is something we have discussed in the recommendations when we're looking at variances, that we do need to consider what the zoning is and what the by right actions on the lots would be not just what's proposed for the current use.
Thank you. Suzanne?
I don't have the town code in front of me. We might want to refer to this because there's actually a discrepancy in our town code. We have a chart that shows that R2 can't have anything more than a two-family dwelling. But if you look at the written definition of R2, it says two-family or multifamily dwelling. So it's a little ambiguous there in our code, and I think we want to make sure, I don't think the chart would be the one that we would go by. We'd have to go by the written definition of R2. Thanks.
Any more comments? Okay, come on back.
This is Daphne Salone again. So this relates back to what Frederick had offered. I see here in the small packet that the open space lot of the current plan is 1.97 acres, and I think he said it was 3. And that brought my attention here to that it's 1.97 unless modified for option B included in the packet. And I would like to know what option B is and if that increases the open space or decreases the open space. And in addition, with this prize knowledge of the wetland, during the spring, summer, and fall, you can walk the subdivision property in the areas of the lots I discussed, and the ground is saturated to 4 inches deep because it is a constant spring that comes up, and it saturates the entire area, and it's a sub irrigation type of situation out there where it's always muddy and wet, and that's the nature of the type of wetland that it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Christina Patterson. This is section 6-2-40, R2 medium density residential district. It is the intent of this district to allow for the orderly and creative development of attached and detached single-family, two-family, and multiple-family dwellings at moderate densities. Such areas are intended to serve as a transition between the lower density zoning districts and the higher density residential areas and commercially zoned areas. So it's more than just duplexes, it's multiple family units. So that's the R2.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments?
I can, back
Okay.
to Ms. Salone's question, option B that was included in the packet was that if the Planning Commission doesn't recommend and finally the Board of Trustees doesn't approve the variance for the installation of sidewalk, curb, and gutter, then the applicant was asking for a small portion of the open land space to be utilized for another dwelling unit, and the offset consideration for the open space is the community desired inclusion of the trail system and walking paths.
Thank you, Corinne. Suzanne?
I just have a quick question. I've seen references to, here for instance on page 3, it's talking about 15 residential lots. But I've seen within the packet mention of 16 lots, so I'm a little confused by that.
Maybe Corinne can erase
The
it.
open space
Frederick.
is a lot.
Right, and that's where I misspoke when I said 3 acres. It's lot 3 is the open space lot, and that figures into it.
Okay, thank you so much. Any more comments? Okay, we're going to go to the board's questions. And Karen, any questions? Mary?
Well, I did notice that they could they could annex additional properties, and they could also subdivide those. So there is a possibility that they could have more lots. I mean, not at this initial today, but after building some, they could acquire more lots. Also, there is a provision for agriculture in here, and I was concerned about under the CC&Rs that the owners of the units would have to agree not to complain about any noises or smells or whatever. It's the agricultural law in Colorado. I was concerned about what if it's a chicken farm that we've had, or the spraying of chemicals and pesticides. We have a lot of organic farmers. What if a neighbor had organic and the other one sprayed pesticides? I don't know how that would be addressed. I'm just bringing it up.
Thank you, Karen. Mary?
You know, I really didn't have any major questions. The R2 designation needs to be considered, I believe, because it could become a much denser place as years go by. It could originally end up with one house per property, and then under this designation could go ahead and have more houses on it. So I think that is a significant thing we need to look at. I think it's pretty clear that nothing can be done until the water moratorium is lifted, except on the 2 lots that do have water. So I think that's very clear in this application. As for the right to farm stuff that's included in this, that's Delta County designations and isn't Town of Paonia designations, so that would be from the county. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I just have one question. And living in an area once that was being developed, you sort of have plan A, B for the middle, and then C. Why wouldn't you start at the far end and do C as A? So the people that are moving in on those 2 lots right in the beginning won't have all the construction traffic for the next several years. That's my only comment. Sure, I'd love one, Frederick.
Not that we've discussed this specifically, but my understanding is just Evo has been for a long time holding this property and trying to develop it in a way that functioned for the town. He's got a lot of money invested, and I think that those riverfront properties are considered more valuable and probably easier to sell, and that's probably
The reasoning behind that?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Comment? Michelle? Yeah, real quick.
That was a big packet, and I seem to recall reading a letter from a resident across the river that said he actually owned a piece of that riverbank. So are you familiar with that letter, and what is happening with that?
I am aware of that, yes. There is an actual section that is actually against the riverfront that is part of the Riverside Estates from the other side. The town actually owns a portion of that as well.
Okay, thank you.
So how is that going to be handled if there's an actual owner of a parcel? And did anyone contact him, or are there
That would be between a neighbor property owner and another neighboring property owner. The town wouldn't have any involvement in any agreements that was between one property owner and the riverbank people who own those lots when it comes to any development along the actual river itself.
Okay, with that, I'm going to close this meeting. And what? Just the hearing part, sorry, not close the whole meeting. And the 3 of us will discuss and give our recommendations. So, Karen, anything else?
don't know what impact that might have, according to Evo. I think it would be important to get his input on that.
Mary? I agree with Karen. I think we need to get back with Evo and find out what, either some kind of insurance that this is going to remain single-family homes, or, I don't know how we can legislate that in so that, 5 years down the road when somebody sells their lot, they can subdivide it and have, more homes put on it or whatever. But anyhow, I think that needs to be addressed with Evo for sure. I am in favor of keeping the restrictions on either building curb and gutter, so I am not in favor of granting that variance.
If I could, Chair, ultimately the zoning of the area is the town, and the town did zone R2. I would like to defer and check with the town attorney, but I do believe ultimately we'd want to confirm that Evo is amenable, but should the town choose to want to rezone that, we would need to go through the rezoning process, but it could be a contingency upon approval. And specifically, if from the committee, if we could get recommendations to provide to both the applicant and to the Board of Trustees, specifically on the big picture of the project, the 2 variance requests, because there's 2 in there. The first variance is specific to the length of road, and we can look at the report and go over each one. The second variance is the installation of the sidewalk curb and gutter, and also would need direct clarification. I respectfully request clarification and direction from the Planning Commission, verbally stating the stipulation that there would be that any development beyond phase 1 would be contingent upon the availability of water taps.
Okay. Are you guys ready to vote?
Sure.
All those in approval signify by saying aye.
So what are we,
Hold.
yeah,
Yes.
what are we
We're-
voting on?
We're voting on the approval of lots 1 and 2 in the Riverbank development.
So, all right, let me ask for clarification. So we're voting that lots 1 and 2 can go ahead and be developed because they have water, and that the others cannot until the water moratorium has been lifted? Well, then
Yes.
I'll vote aye on that.
Aye.
I would really like clarification on the zoning before we go.
That would be, so that would be a direction that you would be giving, one of the contingencies that you would put in place could be the zoning.
Okay, I would vote yes, provided that we get clarification on the zoning.
Okay, that's 3 in favor. I turned it off so I could mumble. Sorry. So that's 3 in favor, so this can go forward to the town of trustees.
I apologize. So in order to be very clear, I would ask that the motion be restated, that we confirm that we have a second on the motion, and then the vote for the motion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what we're doing is giving approval for the first 2 lots at Riverbank with the question of water moratorium for the rest of the division, and the zoning R2 versus R1. Did I say that wrong? Mary's looking at
I'm
me.
confused on the zoning thing. I think my suggestion would be that we vote on, so we have, it seems to me like we have several things we need to vote on. One are the 2 variances. So the road and the curb and gutter. So those are the 2 variances. We also need to vote on assurance that there will no building until the water moratorium is lifted, so the only lots that could be developed are lots 1 and 2.
Right, okay.
And there was another one, Corinne, but I forget.
All right, so I do apologize. I don't want to be running your meeting.
No, please.
So, yeah, I'm sorry, Mary, I didn't hear the first part of when you were repeating
So
the
two
different things.
variances,
The 2 variances,
the water moratorium insurance.
And
then
the
there was
zoning.
another one.
it was the zoning
Okay,
question.
and then contingent on zoning?
So if it appease the commission, we can go through each variance if you'd like, as presented in the review and recommendations, and then that way you can then make your determination on what you're recommending for the board?
I
Yes.
think that's a really good idea.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'm referring to page 13 in the packet. It's page 4 of the review, the administrator review. Variance 1 is the road width and length, section 17440G of the Town Municipal Code. The cul-de-sac length and section 174-50 of the Municipal Code, paved area of right-of-way. So the road length for the development is approximately 1,700 feet. Code requirement is no more than 500 feet. The staff recommendation is to approve the variance with a suggested modification. The emergency turnaround location area between the riverbank lots 2 and 5 currently has a 35-foot shared utility and ditch easement, and it's the recommendation of the staff and town attorney that the turnaround be located in that area, which is more centrally located, and at its current location, it's 700 feet beyond the maximum allowance for the road length. So what that is that is an emergency turnaround before you get to the end of the road, so you don't have to go all the way to the end of the road around the cul-de-sac to exit. Also of note, included in the plan is a 22-foot emergency access easement through the Hops Farm should there be an emergency and the primary entrance from Price Road be obstructed.
Okay.
So
Mary?
I have a question. Is there enough room at the end of the cul-de-sac to turn around so that you have 2 turnaround places on that road? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the fire department's looked at it, everyone's looked at it, so do you want us to vote on variance 1 on the road width and whatnot?
Right, and what your recommendation would be for the
Okay.
board.
Mary?
Sure. All right.
Pardon me, this? Oh, please, go right ahead.
I'm an amateur here, but I thought you would be voting on whether to approve the application with possible stipulation recommendations. It's a recommendation for approval and a recommendation for stipulations or a recommendation to deny of the subdivision application is what I thought you're exactly voting on.
Not right now.
To do here, perhaps not, but whatever it is you're doing, please reduce all your motions to writing so that there is a clear record, because this is pretty confusing so far. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
And so that is essentially what you would be doing, is making a recommendation of whether you're approving the application, which is that big picture when I made the statement about the big picture of what's been provided to you for the entire project, the Riverbank subdivision application, and then each variance, which would be the contingencies that you would be making any recommendations, whether you agree with them or not. Of course, mine are just recommendations. You then make the decision based on the information provided, what your recommendations are for approval or denial to the Board of Trustees. That information will be included in the packet that is presented to the board at their meeting.
Okay.
So I have a question. Can we vote on the variances and the 4 things and then do the total recommendation?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then I make a motion that we accept the recommended variance of the road to 700 or 1,700 feet and the emergency turnaround located between lots 2 and 5.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion is passed. Let's move on to the second one, which is it the zoning?
Yes, no,
No.
no. I'll make another motion.
Okay,
Don't mind,
thanks,
Barb.
Mary.
Okay. So I move that we accept staff recommendation that, all right, make sure I got what I wrote. To deny the variance and that and as the yes, that it's not put into effect until after 50% of the lots have been sold. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor?
Oh, do a second.
Oh, we need a second. Karen?
Turn on your mic, Karen.
So the motion is to approve a variance?
No,
That
is
the-
not to approve the variance. To
Okay.
allow, to require
allow.
the curb and gutter be done, but that 50% of it doesn't have to be completed until after, or that the other half doesn't have to be done until after the.
I misunderstood that. I understood that it didn't have to be done until after 50% of the lots are developed,
Right, exactly. But
Okay,
they
so-
have to do curb and gutter.
all the way.
Right.
Okay, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? No. Okay, so our third vote will be on the recommendation of the whole project?
No, I think we need to talk about the zoning.
Oh, the zoning.
Right. The zoning and the water moratorium are the two items that were my suggestion that are left.
Okay. So I make a motion that Evo be consulted on the zoning and that it is recommended that it be rezoned to R1. That's my motion. Take it or leave it.
I'm against that. I would rather have Sorry, Mary. I would rather see on the deed to the property no more than 2 units per property, since one of the things the town's been discussing is this mother-in-law homes and issues like that. I think it would be easier to put that, and maybe I'm totally wrong, put that into the deed of the property than to move everything to R1 and then ask for a variance.
Well, then, Barb, I rescind my motion, and if you want to make that as a motion, I would second that.
Okay, my motion is to continue with the R2 zoning, but within the deed to the property lots, that there is restriction to 2 livable places on the property. Someone may want to do a detached garage that they turn into a mother-in-law's apartment or what, but it is totally restricted to no multi-unit housing.
I would second that.
Okay, what did I say wrong, guys? Discussion?
I would want to ask the town attorney if you can do that, because you're contravening the intent of the zoning by doing that. think.
Suzanne?
I would ask that you put this in front of the town attorney first, because I believe when you commit a property to a certain zoning, the property owner has a vested statutory right, and we're going to find the town in a lawsuit potentially. I don't think you can start making restrictions on a zone district that's guaranteed. They have a certain property right. And so I really do believe that the town attorney should be consulted on this first, before
Okay,
you make
thank
this
you.
motion. Thank you.
All right.
In that this is a recommendation to send this consideration to the board, could you not just put a stipulation to say this is something that needs to be addressed by the town attorney, you know, the whole package we feel comfortable with, but
Perfect. Yes, because again, this is all going to town council. We're just making a recommendation on it. Bill?
A recommendation to have the town attorney look at it is not a recommendation to do anything. I would ask you to make a recommendation to change the zoning to R1. And then if you want to add on more stuff about, you know, talk to somebody or have the attorney look at it or whatever, that's fine. But just make the recommendation to reduce the zoning density to R1, then that, you know, it's a recommendation.
Well, we have a motion and a second, Barb, so
Okay.
we need
Another comment, please?
Yes, hi, Barry Smith, Price Road. Two things. I agree. It seems like that is what the zoning is for, and to start to parse it seems to be a little kind of getting into the weeds. And I'm wondering, this is my first time hearing about the wetlands as well. I've walked that property many times. It is land. It is wet. I don't know what the actual definition is, but that seems to have just been glossed over. I was wondering if that would be worth investigating further specifically about that aspect.
So I think we need to vote on our motion.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and vote on our motion.
Which is, what's the motion?
Oh, wait.
Okay, one more.
Tina Patterson, I'm confused. Are you voting on Mary's motion originally? Is she reviving it, or?
No,
I
mine was
revised it.
rescinded. It's Barb's motion.
I'm
Okay.
gonna,
But
Amanda can do it.
Yeah.
So what I got down was that you recommend to continue with R2 and put in the deed restrictions to 2 livable units and restrict multi-units.
If people try to subsidize.
Okay, Barb, you need to turn on your mic.
If people try to divide a property, they would have to come to town and get approval to divide the property that they had bought. Okay, Bill?
I'm sorry.
No, don't be, apologize.
The rub in that is that, yes, they would have to come before the town for approval, but if they meet the terms of the zoning or the subdivision regulations as written, you cannot deny that approval. So if the subdivision regulations have a typo in them that they allow multifamily housing in R2 and it's zoned R2 and they come to have it subdivided, you can't deny them the approval to do it. All they have to do is meet your regulations as written. So yes, they have to ask for permission, but there's rules, and if they meet the rules, you can't say no. That's why
Okay.
you should take care of it and zone it R1 now. Thank you.
No, let's vote on that.
Okay, we're going to change the motion.
No, let's just vote on it.
We're going to just vote on it, what Amanda read. So all those in favor?
Aye. All those against?
Nay.
Okay. It's
Now.
2-1.
Okay, I make an alternative motion that we ask to be rezoned to R1.
Okay, any more comments?
No, we're just recommending it be R1.
Okay, all those in
Do we have
favor?
a second?
A second. Karen, thank you.
Please turn on your mic, Karen.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion that we recommend that only lots 1 and 2 may be developed until the water moratorium is lifted.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
I keep on turning it off. I am so sorry.
No, it's okay, they go off.
All those in favor, aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay.
I make a motion that we accept the Riverbank subdivision with the stipulations as outlined in the previous motions.
Any discussion or a second?
Discussion. That we. Second.
Any discussion?
I'm just saying that our acceptance doesn't approve anything. We're just sending it to the board. And this is what we're going to say to the board. We like this with these 3 stipulations. You decide.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And is that it?
So my other question is, do we want to have some kind of investigation about the wetlands? And that we recommend that someone come back to the board when this is presented to the board with some kind of determination on whether this falls within the wetlands or not? But we can add a stipulation, Bill.
Yeah,
So I move that we have someone investigate the wetland status and bring that with the
Preferably the applicant would provide information.
Okay. All right. I make a motion that we have the applicant provide information about the wetlands status on this prior to it being brought before the board.
thank you.
Second.
Do we have to vote? We're voting, okay, all those in favor, please say
Aye.
Aye.
aye. All those opposed? Okay. Is that it?
I think so.
Okay, I'd like to talk to Bill for a minute, when this meeting's closed, if you've got some time. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to formally close the meeting and thank everyone for coming, and we'll go from there. Thank you.